Now, the UK's top spy agency believes new terror training camps in Arab Spring countries could pose a major threat. The head of MI5 said the uprisings, which NATO and its allies have supported, allowed al-Qaeda to move in. Up to 200 extremists from the UK are thought to have joined heavily armed groups abroad. Let's now talk to retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer from the Centre for Advanced Defence Studies, now joining us here on RT. Good to see you today. Thank you for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
When the West started supporting what it called a move towards democracy in the Arab world, it wasn't expecting to end up with Islamist radicalization and terror training grounds, was it?
No, I think people anticipated wrongly that somehow democracy would just kind of spring forth when given a chance to do that. I think people misunderstood badly the idea that you can simply give people a democracy and let them take it from there. I think unless you have a real desire for a democratic process where all voices are heard, the default position is really more totalitarian government. And when that fails, it is an opportunity when society falls apart like it did in Libya, like it's doing in Syria, and frankly in Egypt, you have an opportunity for these groups who are probably the best equipped, best organized to come in and take advantage of the chaos. So I think many people in my government misinterpreted completely the potential outcome of creating chaos where there was no clear path to a stable society.
Now, we've also been hearing reports how homegrown militants say that they've become radicalized because of NATO's foreign wars. So how has the so-called war against terror, how has it turned out? Has it simply bred more terror? There are certainly some that say that.
Well, I think the last 3 years have been seminal in creating the next generation of terrorists. And there's three reasons. First, as much as folks here hated Anwar al-Awlaki, he was a U.S. citizen. And the idea he was assassinated without due cause, and by the way, there's nothing in our legal system here in the United States which indicted him. He was not under indictment. So he was essentially assassinated. In addition to that, there's been a record of, and I'm a former member of our military, there's a record of us killing civilians in the process of going after these bad guys. So what we're doing, and I and others on the conservative side have said, we have to be very careful of the fact that we're creating the next generation of terrorists. So I think in many ways, by the fact you kill civilians, those civilians then become enraged by what you've done, then they gravitate to these terrorist organizations we're alluding to here. And I think that's why we're seeing this revision of radicalism across the board at this point in time.
Well, you talk about a revision of radicalism across the board at this point, also that of breeding a generation of new terrorists. Let's talk about one big event a month away now. Britain's top spy says the Olympic Games could be a target for attack. Do you think a major assault could be planned by homegrown terrorists?
You know, that's an excellent question, and I got to be honest with you, I just don't know. I don't know if anybody knows at this point. We are in many ways going back to the 1970s when it comes to these smaller groups. I was in high school in Lisbon, Portugal during the 70s, and I watched a lot of things going on in Europe. And then in the 80s, we saw a lot of radicalism as well. I actually was an anti-terrorism officer working in Germany during the 80s, looking at a lot of these smaller groups. We've actually essentially kind of cut the head off the Hydra. We've kind of defeated a lot of the leadership, but now you've created these smaller groups, which are much harder to track. So I think in many ways, we are actually adding to this chaos. And frankly, we just don't know at this point in time what will become of these groups when it comes to the Olympics.
Now, as al-Qaeda's training grounds have been proven to be in Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan and Pakistan, do you think has the situation in Afghanistan improved during 10 years of NATO's war there?
Let me answer that question. I was actually on Capitol Hill yesterday meeting with senior members of Congress, our Congress, on this. And frankly, no. We're talking about a situation which has been worse. I wrote a book, Operation Dark Heart, on the tipping point, which happened in 2003 when we went from winning to losing. The reason we went to losing and why we are continuing to lose ground is because we tried to insinuate ourselves into the situation. By us becoming the issue, the tribes, both sides, now focus on us as the target, as the foreigner. Same thing the Russians went through during their occupation. We really involved ourselves for the wrong reasons. We somehow believed we could create a central democracy where one has never existed. Therefore, the gains, which are substantial, that we've made regarding stabilizing the urban areas, is not sustainable. And I think the moment we step away, things are going to revert to the state they were back in the late 1980s, early 1990s.
Certainly wish we had more time for this discussion. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer from the Centre for Advanced Defence Studies. Many thanks for coming on RT.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.